I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. Boom.
Hello there, Price of Reason here with a special report. On June 14th, 2013, Zack Snyder's Warner Bros. DC movie, Man of Steel, came out and introduced the world to a new cinematic version of Superman, played by Henry Cavill. While the movie itself didn't lose money, the reception from both audiences and critics was rather mixed. Some people felt that the movie was too somber to be a Superman movie and not well written enough. Others thought that it was the boldest on-screen Superman movie to date and hailed director Zack Snyder as a genius. Regardless of the discourse at the time, there was one opinion that was pretty much a consensus. Henry Cavill was well cast as Superman, and many considered him a worthy successor in the role to the late Christopher Reeve, who in my opinion will always be the GOAT. Unfortunately, in the years that followed, Warner Bros., navigated by a rotating collection of incompetent executives, made just about every business mistake possible with the DC franchise. As the owners of some of the biggest comic book heroes of all time, such as Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, rather than patiently building and planning their own DC cinematic universe to compete with Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, Warner Bros. Wanted to frantically take shortcuts, which is how we ended up with premature team-up movies like Batman vs. Superman and both versions of Justice League. Now I know some people may like those movies, and that's fine, but I would argue that even their most enthusiastic fans would also agree that Henry Cavill should have received a solo Man of Steel sequel in order to continue to build his Superman character either before or alongside those other team-up movies. But Warner Bros. Had other plans. Between 2013 to 2021, not only would they refuse to greenlight another solo movie starring Henry Cavill's Superman, in order to promote trendy social agendas, they ultimately decided to get rid of Cavill altogether and replace him with a little girl. While I'm sure that Henry Cavill was already financially secure after his DC films professionally, I assume that navigating his career over the past decade hasn't always been easy. On the one hand, during the 2010s, Cavill was seemingly a legitimate Hollywood leading man that should have been offered plenty of high-profile movie roles. On the other hand, certain social agendas that dominated the entertainment industry actually lowered his value. In a move that probably made financial sense, in the midst of all of this hypocritical activism, Henry Cavill built a relationship with Netflix, who up until recently were always ready to pay big money for top-tier talent. As part of this new relationship, Cavill agreed to play Sherlock Holmes, a supporting role in the 2020 Millie Bobby Brown vehicle Enola Holmes on Netflix and its 2022 sequel. While those movies seemed like much simpler paydays for the actor, where he could smile to the camera a few times and collect his hefty paycheck, in a move that surprised many, myself included, Cavill had also signed on to star as the lead role in Netflix's fantasy series, The Witcher, based on the works of Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski. While the $400,000 per episode that Netflix paid him for the show's first season certainly wasn't shabby, it was known that Henry Cavill was genuinely interested in the role because he loved the source material. You see, in addition to being a physically fit Hollywood star, Cavill is uncharacteristically somewhat of a nerd that also builds computers in his spare time, reads books, and plays video games, and as a big fan of the Witcher series, Cavill was excited to take on the role of Geralt. At first, on the surface, Cavill's gamble seemed to have paid off. With Lauren Hisrich, a former Daredevil and Defenders writer and producer, acting as showrunner on The Witcher, things were looking up, and indeed the first season of Witcher was a huge success, setting viewing records for Netflix. Audiences tuned in to see Henry Cavill kicking ass in the main role, and the series also introduced us to Anya Charlotta as Yennefer, who was also, well received. Upon the show's premiere, although some unofficial sources had claimed that Henry Cavill was already signed for 5 seasons of the show, I suspect that Henry Cavill must have initially only signed up for 1 season, and I believe that only after a positive reception for season 1 did he sign a contract for 2 more seasons at $1 million an episode. Even if for some reason Cavill did sign a multi-season deal at any point as rumors had suggested, and even if it was for 5 seasons, I suspect that there was always likely an exit clause in the contract that would allow him to leave if he was offered more Superman movies and/or James Bond movies, but we'll get back to that later. While it's fair to point out that even Season 1 of The Witcher wasn't flawless and didn't necessarily satisfy all the fans of the actual source material books and video games, many people, myself included, were still able to enjoy it. The main reason for this had to be Henry Cavill, who really delivered in this role, showing audiences that he had much more to offer than just being Superman. In addition, newcomer Anya Charlotta really impressed viewers with her acting. However, while Season 1 of The Witcher was generally well received by viewers, the critics were rather lukewarm about it. If I had to guess why, I think it's probably because it didn't peddle enough trendy agendas for them, as opposed to shows like She-Hulk and Rings of Power that received suspiciously high scores from critics, even though they were pretty much crap. Unfortunately, these days, if your show has a straight male lead character beating people up and spending time with the ladies, you automatically get points deducted. And for those of you thinking, but Charlotta's Yennefer was a strong woman too, keep in mind that she was also super hot, which is also something that gets points deducted by Access Media critics these days. She would have to gain at least 200 pounds for them to like her. At this point, if I were showrunner Lauren Hisrich, I would have just ignored the Access Media critics. Instead, I would have listened to the show's viewers, as well as franchise fans, to see if there was a way to improve the show and perhaps follow the source material more accurately. Now, I'm not suggesting that listening to your audience means to blindly accept everything they say, but a good showrunner should always be aware of the general pulse of their audience. Unfortunately, Hisrich committed the same sin that most Hollywood showrunners do these days, especially the more activist ones. The success went to her head, and she became greedy. Hisrich wanted the Access Media critics to sing her praises, to tell her that she's a very inspiring woman, to declare that she's the best. So for Season 2, rather than improving on her existing work and looking more to the source material, she preferred to pander to her critics by pushing the agendas even more aggressively. As a result, when Season 2 premiered, it became rather clear that the show had instantaneously become much more agenda-based. Henry Cavill's Witcher became more of a side character in his own show, and when you did see him, he was mostly talking about his feelings. Yennefer's character was given more of a spotlight, but that character also suffered as she spent what seemed like an entire season walking through the forest. I also felt like her beauty was somehow purposely toned down, because women that look good these days have to hide it for some reason. The entire season felt like it was pushing more of a "you go girl" theme, which in my opinion was a very poor creative decision. Truth be told, after enjoying Season 1, I was barely able to make it to the end of Season 2. While showrunner Lauren Hisrich may have been pleased with the enthusiasm that the Access Media showed her in Season 2, when they awarded her a Sopranos-level 95% fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score drop for this season was very telling and clearly shows that I wasn't alone in disliking it. While I do mildly appreciate that after the Season 2 debacle, Hisrich wasn't afraid to engage disappointed fans online, I ultimately didn't like what she was saying when she was trying to explain why she made Season 2 the way it was.
I am writing an adaptation. It's what I was hired to do. And I think my experience specifically is that I'm a woman. I started thinking about all of the other people who might not see themselves represented in fantasy either. Because let's be honest, fantasy has often been told through a white male perspective.
Wow, I bet she's super fun at parties. Anyhow, in addition to her huge missteps, it also didn't help Hisrich that articles started popping up saying that Henry Cavill corrected her writing on the show in an instance where she treated the source material as a joke. While subtle, it was also very telling that Cavill said that he was only committed to being on the show for 7 seasons if the writers made sure to honor the source material. More recently, Beau DeMaio, a former writer and producer on the show, claimed that people in the production of The Witcher actively mocked and disliked the source material, and I strongly suspect that this criticism was aimed toward Hisrich herself. Here's where things get interesting though. Remember how I said that Warner Brothers wanted Henry Cavill's Superman to be replaced by a little girl? Well, all of that changed after the April 2022 merger of Warner Bros. Discovery, led by no-nonsense media mogul David Zaslav. As the CEO of the new company, Zaslav fired all of his incompetent, agenda-peddling top executives and replaced them with new and seemingly more competent ones. In addition, as previously reported on this channel, he scrapped the already completed Batgirl movie, cancelled the Supergirl project already in development, and made a bold decision. Henry Cavill would return to the franchise as Superman, beginning with a brief cameo in the DC movie Black Adam, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Shortly after this announcement, on October 30th, 2022, it was also announced that Henry Cavill would exit the Witcher series after Season 3, which had already completed filming. Moving forward, Liam Hemsworth, best known for being Chris Hemsworth's brother and Miley Cyrus's ex-husband, would replace him in the role. Now, I know a lot of Access Media News outlets are making it seem like it would be difficult to commit to both Superman and The Witcher at the same time, and you even have some people claiming that Cavill felt that he was too good to be on a TV series. I would disagree with that assessment, especially given what a big fan he was of the source material. It'll take a few years before another Superman movie starts filming, and if Henry Cavill really wanted to stay for more Witcher seasons, he most likely would. I'm sure Netflix would also pay him top dollar to do so. To me, it looks like Superman is just a convenient opportunity for Cavill to bow out gracefully, and most likely his contract was set up to allow him to leave under these very circumstances. Putting aside all of the Superman excitement, I'm sure Cavill was aware of how stinky Season 2 of The Witcher was, and as a rule of thumb, when a series dips in quality to such great extent, it's very difficult to bounce back from it. After Henry Cavill's departure, I suspect that the show could sink much lower in viewership, and Liam Hemsworth isn't considered the same type of draw as Henry Cavill. If it's any consolation to showrunner Lauren Hisrich, the Access Media will probably continue to tell her how great she is as she captains this sinking ship and injects her personal agendas into the source material. So I guess all's well that ends well. How do you feel about Henry Cavill's departure from The Witcher and his return to the role of Superman? Feel free to leave me your thoughts in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also clicking on that wonderful notification bell. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos. But